Yes. Education is elevation. I told y'all I was trying to build some cadence on going live on Wednesdays, man. I'm proud of myself. We're here Wednesday. I'm gonna call these live streams keeping it conscious, man. Today we have us a nice little conversation about the carceral state, specifically in Oklahoma. I got, know what I'm saying, somebody that I have seen kind of grow into the person he is. I seen him as like a freshman. I met him as a freshman at the University of Oklahoma. Y'all know Oklahoma is like my second home. I think right now when we stand down the borough of fascism, it's important that we connect with people that's on the ground, that's doing grassroots. You feel me? And not always focused on the top down. So in this conversation, in fact, I'm gonna say that in this conversation, we're gonna be getting into how Oklahoma is the third worst rate in how Oklahoma incarcerates the third worst rate in the United States, far more than the national average, and it's significantly more than any more than entire countries. Sorry, I'm over here blabbling, man. But to bring on the person that knows what's going on, man, I got my boy right here.
What's up?
I
What's
call
up?
him Cisco. You know,
Yeah.
artist. I never say a first name right. I feel like
No, you
sorry,
good. You
but
good. Aurelius. There you go.
I
Yeah.
really is, man. So yeah, man. Let's go on, get right into it, man. What's the uniqueness of what's going on in Oklahoma? For the audience, if you can you define the word carceral, like carceral state? Can you define what that is?
No, for sure. Appreciate you having me on. What's up, everybody? Name is Aurelius Francisco. I'm an organizer here in Oklahoma City. I'm doing work here for some time. Lead an organization called Foundation for Liberating Minds, where we're using transformative education as a tool to disrupt systems of oppression. And we focus a lot around the carceral state. So I really love what you're doing, conscious around education on the left, because we need more and more in that as we are seeing the rise of authoritarianism in our country and across the world for sure. Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do is around Oklahoma's prison system, incarceration, policing, and sort of the overarching term, which is the carceral state, which is carceral is just the root of incarceration, and the idea, the concept of a carceral state is all about understanding how states or governments have been created around carcerality, around incarceration, policing, courts, right, and funneling people into this behemoth that we know as mass incarceration, mass criminalization, mass punishment, and how that has become sort of the knee-jerk reaction or common sense response to all kinds of problems in our society, whether that's drug addiction, homelessness, violence, anything like this. We just throw police at it and we throw incarceration at it. And in a place like Oklahoma, which ranks near the top, we're one of the worst incarcerators in the entire world, not just the country. We see this and feel this really, really intimately in Oklahoma. The ways that policing and courts and incarceration are the response to so many problems instead of the state providing services and resources, housing and food and transportation and things like that. So a lot of our organizing is just to sort of hold up a mirror to Oklahoma to say you all like to hold up this Oklahoma standard, that we show up for each other, that we care for each other. But the most vulnerable in our community, and especially in Black and Brown and low income communities, are not feeling that standard, right? Are feeling a very different standard, a standard
Yeah.
of policing and surveillance and incarceration, and so we're trying to disrupt that every way we can.
Yeah, so I know that Oklahoma is one of the lower ranked states when it comes to education. What do you think is the relationship between that low funding education and this high incarceration rate?
It's huge. It's huge. Just looking at where our state budget and also local budget, different cities, rural or urban, the investments that you have into incarceration, the cost, the price tag that comes with incarcerating somebody in a jail cell or in a prison for a year versus the cost of educating somebody for a year is completely disproportionate in Oklahoma, right? And so the connection is huge. We rank 49th in education. Overall, I think we're like 46 for overall child well-being in the country. So not just education, but also just overall sort of services, childcare, all of these kinds of things that impact Oklahomans' childhood. And the amount of trauma that we're experiencing in Oklahoma is huge. And we know that when you've experienced lots and lots of childhood trauma, the likelihood that you will be in a cycle of incarceration as you reach your teenage to adulthood years increases exponentially, right? And so the reality is that we don't invest in our public schools. We've got voucher programs in Oklahoma. We've got school choice being pushed. Ryan Walters, who is our state superintendent.
Ooh, I can't stand that man, boy.
He's horrendous, and he's horrendous, and continues to just push even though he's a superintendent for the Board of Education, right? He's in charge of our public schools. He seems to hate public schools for real, and he hates Black and brown students. And so, we have an education system that is poorly invested in. We have teachers who are severely underpaid, who every single year are fleeing to other states where they can make better wages. And we got students who are suffering in our schools. And so because of that, kids are looking for other avenues to find community, to find hope, and to find any semblance of, a way to make a life, right? To make some money, to make some bread. And those actions oftentimes get criminalized in our schools and in our community. And so that leads into what is, commonly referred to as the school to prison pipeline, but how I really prefer the term, the school to prison nexus, which really talks about how schools and prisons are one and the same. It's not just a pipeline, right? We're not just feeding kids into a penal system, but actually like the school is a breeding ground for carcerality. Like it is
like Michelle Foucault, like type of shit, like Michelle Foucault.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it is a site of policing. It is a site of incarceration, just in different forms, right? You think about detention, you think about in-school suspension, you think about expulsions, you think about school resource officers, right? Like cops in schools. These are all ways that our schools have become training grounds for incarceration.
Hell yeah. I mean, people that's watching this, man, my first year being a high school teacher was at Putnam Heights Academy, man. I'd never forget this. It's an alternative Title I school in Oklahoma City. I'm teaching there in the pandemic. In order for the students to get into the classroom, they got to pass through the metal detector. I'm a country boy from Bryan, Texas. I went to school with the white folks and the Mexican folks and the Black folks, and the white parents was not going to allow for their white students, their white kids, to go through a metal detector. Me being in university, me being in the OKC ISD and seeing how criminality is damn near subscribed on to the students as soon as you get on the premises, and then seeing how it almost like cultivates the perfect criminal. You get used to being able to go around surveillance. You get used to being able to go through metal detectors. You get used to being able to be, chaperone your body and not worried about what's going on in your mind. And for me, it made me think about how when I was a 9th and 10th grade English teacher, how a lot of my students not only read below reading level, but how a lot of them were experiencing different learning disabilities. And then I thought about how if you was in my classroom, you was in my classroom, the next stop was definitely you going to the Nexus. You going to whatever county jail or juvenile. But I had a couple of students they charged as adults, even though they were 17. You know what I'm saying? So I say I have to say to make sure I'm giving like a little personal story of why I think this story is important, because I know students in the state of Oklahoma that's looking for commissary and mail right now. I also know students that's trying to dodge every which way the carceral state is trying to get them. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think this conversation is important, because I know if Oklahoma is the third, we don't want to get into two and get into, you know what I'm saying, get into two and get into one, but we know that Oklahoma used to be number one when I was there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we've only gotten there. I mean, so right now our rate of incarceration is 905 per 100,000 people, which Prison Policy Initiative has some really good bar charts where you can see the comparison between states like Oklahoma and Louisiana and Mississippi and Arkansas compared to the United States rate, right? Like it's significantly higher. And then you look at other countries, it's also way, way, way higher, right? And so incarceration rates, like we have become the third or fourth worst incarceration rate in the country because of some positive criminal justice reform, but still being number 3 or 4 is not great in that realm, right? In incarceration. When we're looking at overall childhood well-being, when we're looking at rates of ACE scores, when we're looking at education, rankings and things of that nature that actually are positive and actually promote the sort of healthiness of an entire state, we're near the bottom. But when it comes to incarceration, when it comes to police violence, we're near the top, right? And it goes to show where our priorities are in the state, which is we don't really care about these kids in your classroom, George. We don't care about the everyday student. We don't care about their parents or their families who are trying to make ends meet and trying to make a way out of no way, right? We just care about these corporations and trying to bring more businesses in and give them tax cuts.
And it's the reason why the superintendent of the state, when he brags on Twitter or brags on his social media about how Oklahoma is the first #1 state to ban DEI in the schools, or Oklahoma is the first state to make sure we get trans, be like, you worried about Oklahoma being the first state in all the wrong categories. Because then I also think about, so you weaponize children's welfare against the drag queens, but you don't care about children's welfare when it comes to funding the classroom.
Right.
And to me, I think that the direct relationship is that, all studies show that the higher level of education students go, the less likely they are to be incarcerated. And I feel like for people that's watching this, I'm saying, I think that Governor Kevin Stitt, being a devout Trump maggot, it's important for us to acknowledge the way that the federal government is pushing Project 2025 and how that trickles down to states like Oklahoma. I got right here, I got 5 ways that Project 2025 will uniquely perpetuate the carceral state for people that's coming in right now. When I say carceral state, the system of mass incarceration, policing, punitive justice that disproportionately target marginalized communities. And like Ariel has said, like carceral, just a little conjugate of incarceration. But we know that Project 2025 is calling for the expanding of federal policing and harsher sentences. What I know when I lived in the state of Oklahoma is that though it was a state that had it was a state that had the harshest marijuana punishments that allowed for you to get up to life for things like hash. So when I think about the expansion of the carceral state, especially for states like Oklahoma, it shows me they always have the potential to go back to being #1 in incarceration. And the state, that the United States incarcerates about 25% of the world population.
Yep.
Something like that. Oh no, I said it differently. The United States holds 25% of the world's prison population. Mm-hmm. So Oklahoma is incarcerating more in the state, incarcerating at a rate higher than a lot of countries throughout the world.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? A second one and third one, militarizing law enforcement, proposing more funding and more aggressive policing. I know everybody was mad every time I bring up ICE. But when we talk about militarizing, like militarizing law enforcement, we just gave the biggest budget to ICE in American history that makes them the biggest law enforcement body in the country. Right. To me, when I'm talking about black folks, I think about policing, I automatically think how we are disproportionately policed and how anytime we have a police force, it's going to be some bad shit for us. Do you have anything to add in these two, just before I even get to the third one, about this federal policing, like what comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, the militarization is huge, right? Like we've been seeing that across the country for over a decade, right? Like, during the entire Black Lives Matter movement, that was a major call, is like the ways that the police force has been militarized. And in Oklahoma, we've been celebrating for a couple of weeks now. The Oklahoma City Thunder won. But what I remember going to a lot of these games in downtown Oklahoma City is the massive sort of police tankers that are downtown Oklahoma City. Snipers on tops of buildings, right? So like you literally think about a police state, a military state, like the police have become the military. And the question that you always have to ask is, when you think about what the military does across the world, and then you think about a police force being militarized in local communities like Oklahoma City, who's the combatant? Who's the enemy that they're fighting, right? It's people who look like us. And so that is the issue with the militarization of policing, is the fact that like it creates an oppositional force between the police and communities of color and low income communities, especially. And it's just like, these tanks cost a whole lot of money. We just heard how, our classrooms aren't being funded, teachers aren't being funded, but our police forces got tanks out the bozo, right? Got the nicest weapons and the nicest gear, you can buy. But we can't fund our teachers. And so that is the reality of a carceral state and a police state.
Yeah, and I think that it illustrates what America cares about when it comes to military-based kids. If we,
Mhm.
I see right here, in Oklahoma, a significant number of children experience homelessness. An estimated suggested nearly 44,000 children are affected. This includes those living in shelters, traditional housing, and lacking a fixed regular living situation. To me, when I think about that and recognize in terms of like incarceration, in terms of incarceration, I know that in Oklahoma, there's also ways that we criminalize, you know what I'm saying, unhoused people that make it where it's more incentive for them to be placed in, you know what I'm saying, prison or for them to be placed in county jail. And thinking about how much Kevin Stitt, Ryan Walters use children's general welfare and then turn around and leave them on the streets, literally, to me, show how insidious conservative contradictions are and
Right.
get into, to me, like the uniqueness of what's going on in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I
Number
mean, they
three.
don't.
Oh yeah, you got
It
it.
yeah. I mean, it's just it is very insidious is the right word, right? Like they do not care about kids and students and children. You know, they care about pushing this narrative and pushing out more more policies that will really increase their own wealth and the wealth of their donors, right? That is all they care about. It's the bottom line, right? And it is incredibly unfortunate because the people who suffer from it are our kids, our young people, our low income workers, right? Our people who are just trying to get by for real. And we have a state government and local governments too. You think about like you bring up the homelessness issue in Oklahoma City. We had a panhandling ordinance. Where they made it illegal to panhandle for some time in Oklahoma City,
Really?
right? And you see that in different places how just living on the street has become illegal. And we know, like again, something else around sports that is getting touted in Oklahoma City. Um, we've got the Olympics coming in 2028, right? And we know how we've seen in other countries the ways that homelessness doesn't really get addressed in positive ways, like housing people, but instead they just get pushed to the outskirts. And so we're really, really concerned right now with the ways that with the Olympics coming, how they're just going to push these encampments further and further out in the city while they're decreasing these services. And that's coming directly from, the federal government. Because so
Yeah.
much of that of those homeless services come from the federal government. And so you talk about how the things these policies from the Trump administration and the Republican agenda, Project 2025 in DC, how it does deeply, deeply affect local policy and local efforts to provide housing and support for homeless people.
Definitely. And we know Project 2025 is also trying to expand detention and privatize more prisons. We know that it specifically supports private prisons despite the record of abuse and profiteering. We also see there's a bunch of reports coming out of Alligator Alcatraz, whatever the hell they want to call it, about the same type of abuse and the same type of profiteering. I feel like when we start talking about the bottom line, we got to ask ourselves the bottom line for who? And we know it's not the people down here with us. We know it's particularly those people on top. And to me, when I think about Project 2025, who's going to benefit from privatizing the prison? Who's going to benefit from expanding detentions? Who's going to benefit from attacking criminal justice reform? Who's going to benefit from criminalizing marginalized groups? We know that Project 2025 is very specific in the ways that it wants to expand the carceral state. And I think that a lot of us are being willfully ignorant in some instances, saying they ain't got nothing to do with us, when we know anytime it comes to incarceration, criminalization, or expanding police, Black people are the first to bear the brunt, and we
Yep.
disproportionately do it. So
Right.
the part of doing this live, as well as, to me, Huey P. Newton always talked about thinking globally, acting locally. Think globally, act locally. Something that I learned while I was in the state of Oklahoma as a student is that when Michael Brown and Ferguson, Missouri got militarized, a lot of that equipment in Ferguson came from literally Palestine, came from Gaza. The same money we send to weapons to send over there, they send those weapons back. And then they literally lease them out to local policing. You know what I'm saying? I read something called, I read this piece of work from Dr. Mark Lamont Hill about from Ferguson to Gaza, literally linking the surveillance and linking the tactics in the policing, you know what I'm saying, apparatus from Gaza all the way to Ferguson. So when I'm talking about international relations, you like ain't got nothing to do with here. Shit, they gonna perfect the weapons and perfect the surveillance over there and then transport it over here to police Black people, to incarcerate Black people, to make it where you got states like Oklahoma, where they don't spend no money on educating us, but spend a lot of money in incarcerating us.
Right, right. And this is the thing too with like when Black people especially talk about how talking about ICE and immigration is a distraction, and talking about Palestine is a distraction. Like if we are going to win, and if we are going to fight this carceral state and fight the rise of fascism and authoritarianism and sort of an agenda by the right, which is to erase all people who are different than the cis heteronormative white man, right? Like we got to come together with different communities and different groups of people in solidarity. Like we are not going to win what we have to win just by being siloed and isolated in our own communities. Like the thing about organizing is building as much people power as possible. And so that's people power across differences. You brought up Huey Newton, right? You think about Fred Hampton, rainbow coalitions that the Black Panthers were trying to build across differences, right? Building with working class white people, building with Latinos in Chicago, right? Like this is something that we have to model in today, is to really practice solidarity and showing up and seeing these connections between Ferguson and Gaza, seeing the connections between ICE and the police, and how ICE and the police and local county jails are building these contracts with each other to work hand in hand so that local police officers are able to now be federal immigration enforcement, right? And again, as George is saying, like if ICE is getting more money, that means the police are getting more money. Like that's what the carceral state helps us understand, is that all of these entities are one and the same, that they're being used to propagate more and more incarceration and policing and confinement. And whether it's Mexicans or Black people or Haitians or whatever group you want to talk about, like we are all under the thumbprint of this carceral state. And so we all have to come together to resist that shit. Otherwise, it's going to take all of us and we're going to be dead. Like that's what we're up against, is like, this is a life or death fight right now. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that the more we try to talk about, oh, that ain't our issue, we don't got to talk about it, we don't got to worry about it, the more they are going to organize against us to create more and more power to criminalize, confine, and kill our people. And if you think it's another community today, I promise it's going to be you tomorrow. So better to understand these links and come together in solidarity to try to fight against this stuff. Because otherwise, like, you know, again, it's life or death, man. And so like I'm really, really passionate about that, because I think it's really ignorant for Black people to act like immigration is not our issue. Like, you know, George, you were African-American studies major. I was as well. Like I consider myself a Black studies scholar. And if there's one thing that you learn in Black studies classes, it's the reality that every issue is a race issue. Every issue is about Blackness. Every issue is about anti-Blackness. And so you can find those connections within everything. If you want to talk about immigration, think about all of the Haitian immigrants who are being targeted, right? Think about African immigrants who are being targeted. If you want to talk about Palestine, think about the connections between the Israeli Defense Force and local police institutions, right? Like all of these things are connected. Like you can find that connection with Black issues, quote unquote, in every single issue. But the reality is we got to show up in solidarity with each other, even if it's not a Black person who's being targeted, because I promise it affects us.
And even if you want to be Black first and foremost and Black centered, we know that Black people, we have all type of disparities when it comes to healthcare. Yep. They care more about policing, quote unquote, immigrant populations than they care about making sure Black folks got access to healthcare. They took away our Medicaid, our Medicare, funding in the classroom, funding around DEI, all to give that money to make sure billionaires get tax cuts and to make sure ICE becomes the biggest law enforcement in the country. That has to do specifically with us. When we think about the criminalization of Black history and how they can't understand the difference between Black history, critical race theory, and DEI, all those things are incentivized by, to me, funding, how they circumventing funds from over here and putting them over there, as well as this big ass master playbook called Project 2025. Right. So y'all thinking that chapter 1, chapter 2 ain't got nothing to do with you, when in actuality, the whole book is tied together. And if you don't think they all tied together, don't worry about it. They'll get to you in chapter 3 or chapter 4. I think that's the reason why a conversation like this is important. And also, you see, bro, he not waiting on no elected official in terms of creating an organization, in terms of spreading information, in terms of really trying to build resistance. He's not waiting on the poll. He's not waiting. Don't get me wrong. He understands the utility of those things. But in terms of action, the action doesn't start during the election year and it doesn't start at the poll. I think it's important for us as a people, especially in this fascist American Trump administration, for us to see people like Mr. Francisco that's able to really show us the work. I feel like I want to, you know what I'm saying? I feel like I say it wrong all the time. Aurelius.
But just do Mr. Fran. That's cool. Just do Fran.
Aurelius, like I said that though. Aurelius though. Mr. I feel like I always called you Francisco. As when you was young, I was calling you Francisco. Facts. But I'm curious. Do you think your governor gonna run for president?
Sheesh. I doubt it, honestly, because we saw the ways that he has been gunning for different secretary seats in the past years. He's been making statements about international relations and issues like that from a governor perspective has nothing to do with the state of Oklahoma. And like, that's because he's been gunning for different secretary positions with Donald Trump, trying to cozy up with him. I could see Ryan Walters running before Kevin Stitt, honestly, but you never know. He might run in the ring, but I can't see him winning, honestly, because I just don't think he's that good of a politician. And in a state like Oklahoma, like even in Republican spaces, like we are not seen as a stalwart on the political stage. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I could see him if you know somebody, which you never, like Donald Trump's talking crazy and he started to roll back a little bit, but I mean he's honestly talking about never leaving. He's talking about never leaving. What's up, Cherie?
You know what I mean? Shout out to the OG. Shout out to the OG. We are, you know, matter of fact, OG, we got to get you on here. We got to get you on here to speak, you know what I'm saying, speak some uniqueness and nuances around the state of Oklahoma. Cause I know you be in these streets.
Yeah, nah, Cherie. Shout out Cherie for sure. OG elder in the community. But yeah, I mean, Trump may never leave office. So it might be, you know, if he has his way, it might be him for the rest of the time. You know, if we don't get him up out of here. So we'll see.
Definitely we'll see, man. I got a video that I want to play. Before I play the video, the reason why I'm showing y'all this video is because I know that we are indoctrinated to view people that are imprisoned as exposable and disposable. And as a result, it usually justifies a lot of dehumanization towards them and a lot of violence towards them. When I started paying attention to this, and you know what I'm saying, Francisco started telling me about the incarceration uniquely. It was about how Oklahoma women was number one in the state. I mean, number one in the country for incarceration of women. I'm about to show y'all this video of this woman detailing one of her experiences, you know, as somebody that's, you know what I'm saying, incarcerated.
I was asked to turn the light on. And I told her, I said, can you do this arm? Because I know that I have a great vein. I know what I'm doing. I said, can you at least turn the light on? She kept saying, I'm like, it's hurting, it's hurting. Oh my gosh, you're just being a baby. And I yanked my arm from her and I said, can I get somebody else? She looked at the guard and said, are you going to allow her to do this? I'm a human being. All I did was ask you to turn the light on. I'm not being rude. I'm not being mean. The guard said, can you just please get someone else? Because obviously you're not doing something right. Another nurse comes in. The other nurse isn't there. She turns the light on. It wasn't even a vein right there. You see me in a guard in orange jumpsuit. And you feel like you can judge me? You don't know what I'm here for? Because the only difference between me and somebody else is because you didn't get caught, okay?
And her ending on that, it made me think about, bro, when I was a freshman at OU, my daddy got busted. He got busted. I feel like he had like 9 pounds and like $18,000 cash. You feel me? In Texas. Mm-hmm. Now in the same state, these white boys I was going to school with, they got busted with like 30 pounds and like 100,000. Now, at the time, Oklahoma is supposed to be one of the harshest states for conviction of marijuana. These white boys got like 10 years probation. My daddy got a 15-year, you know what I'm saying, a 15-year plea deal. It's something that sticks for me, you feel me, throughout my life ever since it's happened. And I always think about how when it comes to incarceration of Black poor people uniquely, it's some white folks at the University of Oklahoma, at Oklahoma State University, that's doing a lot of things that folks getting locked up for in Tulsa and Oklahoma City and in Lawton. And it's something that's always just sat with me about how equal protection under law is damn near like a myth.
Right. No, 100%, right? It's you look at rates of incarceration and sentencing specifically around different drugs and how certain drugs get criminalized and which people, black versus white people, are using some of these drugs. Like we've seen in recent years, huge strides around the opioid epidemic in Oklahoma, right? Like that is a huge factor in like who is using these drugs. And so the opioid epidemic gets treated like a public health issue. But the crack epidemic gets treated like an issue where you got to throw the police and incarceration at it. And you got to throw 3 strikes laws and minimum sentencing and harsh sentencing at these things, right? And that's all about who's using these drugs and who's not. And yeah, with Mashyla, so that video is from our 1 and 2 campaign where we share the stories of Oklahomans who have been impacted by the carceral state. What Mashyla's saying there at the end is huge. It's like policing is not some equal force of police in certain communities and surveilling others equally, right? It is about which communities get surveilled and which communities don't. That is very, very intentional. And it's not some objective force of where crime happens and where it doesn't happen. It is about where the police are focusing. And those are the communities, Black and brown communities, low income communities, who are overly represented in Oklahoma's prisons and jails, right? And so the reality is that, yeah, man, like people do illegal stuff all the time. White people do illegal stuff all the time, right? Like you even talk about, in one of the videos we show, Ryan Mukes talks about, selling drugs in the hood, right? And then these pharmaceutical companies are the biggest drug dealers in the world, but you will never see them in a jail cell, right? And so incarceration breeds off of the poor and the working class, and rich people can get away with all kinds of drug use, all kinds of evil maneuvering, of stealing money from their workers, and will never spend time incarcerated, right? You think about your president, man. Like, I don't like using the F word, but he's been convicted on multiple counts, right? And he's in the highest office in the entire world. And so, like, that's the reality for rich white men, right? Generationally wealthy white men versus for poor Black men, poor Black women.
For sure. And I think, to me, the carceral state is important about how it uses words and how it shifts onus. To me, when it comes to the street drug dealer, the onus is always put on them, the impact they have on the people they sell it to. Right. See what I'm saying? But when it comes to the opioid crisis, the blame, you feel me? The culpability is shifted to the user. You know what I'm saying? We don't incarcerate, or we don't criminalize, we don't pathologize, you feel me, or stigmatize the big pharmaceuticals. Something right here too. I feel like a little meme I posted to my Instagram 2 days ago. I think it contextualized what we're getting into right here. Y'all realize how the lowest levels of crime committed by the poorest people receive the heaviest policing, right? And that the wealthiest, most powerful people who are committing crimes against humanity aren't police heavy because they own the police. I hope we all realize this. When we start talking about legality, and y'all keep on talking about the illegals and illegal this and illegal that and this illegal that, to me, that come off as being real dumb, because you got a president that has 34 felonies. So I'm seeing how we have selective moral outrage when it comes to the law, but we also got to recognize that the law always has a disproportionate way of viewing us, you know what I'm saying, in position, and people in power. Hey, if me and him pollute, they'll take our ass to jail. They'll fine us.
Right.
If corporations pollute, they'll get subsidies and tax cuts.
Right. That's facts.
To me, y'all, this is part of the carceral state, man. Yeah, shit, really got. Hold on, actually, hold on, real fast, actually, real fast too. I got a couple more speaking points. You know what I'm saying? And feel free to chime in whenever you want to chime in, cut me off. You feel me? Another reason I like to talk about as well is that I don't like when Black people engage in bipartisan politics too much, because I don't believe the Black experience is captured by bipartisan politics. The reason for that is when we start talking about the incarceration of Black people, and the pattern of killing black people, there is a consistency from red states and blue states. And it's not to say that the red and blue is the same. It's talking about how black life uniquely is cultivated when it comes to incarceration and freedom in these states. You see what I'm saying? And something that I seen on y'all 1 or 2 campaign website that kind of was jarring to me is that black people make up 7% of Oklahoma's population, but 26% of the incarcerated population. When white folks hear stats like that, they think it's indicative that shows that black folks are inherently criminal. You and I know it's like, hey, nah, we're more surveillance, we're more suspected, we're more detected, therefore we're more policed. We know that all the FBI studies show that black people and white people use and sell drugs at similar rates.
Right.
You see, black people are incarcerated at extremely high rates, though.
Mm-hmm.
Important when talking about the carceral state.
For sure. Yeah. And I think one other thing that I want to bring up, just because we show Mashila's clip there, and I encourage everybody watching to go and check out the 1 or 2 campaign website and to watch those stories in full. They are painful to watch, but they are also beautiful stories of redemption, and that showed the breadth of people's experiences who are incarcerated in Oklahoma and the reasons why they get incarcerated. But Mashila is a survivor of domestic violence, and I think the reason that she was criminalized was due to multiple instances of surviving abuse and coping with that abuse, and she was criminalized for her coping mechanisms, right? And the reality of women's incarceration in Oklahoma is that very conservative estimates show that upwards of 60% of the people in women's facilities are survivors of gender-based violence. And so when we talk about how Kevin Stitt and other elected officials like to use children, we also see how DAs and chiefs of police and how lawmakers use survivors, right? Use the fact that the reason that we need all these cops and the reason that we need incarceration and these harsh sentences is because of abusers, that they're these terrible, violent people who are out here running amok. And the reality that how Oklahoma responds to domestic violence and sexual assault is by incarcerating those very same survivors for surviving, right? So like the epidemic of criminalized survivorship, the reality, the connection between surviving gender-based violence and being criminalized for that survival, whether you defended yourself, whether you quote unquote failed to protect your child, whether you coped with drugs or alcohol or what have you, and you were criminalized for that drug use. The reality of criminalized survivors is a huge, huge epidemic in Oklahoma. And so when they use those talking points of we've got to protect victims and we've got to protect survivors, the reality is not only are they not protecting and keeping survivors and victims safe, but they're incarcerating so many of those very same victims and survivors. And so these contradictions, this is what we're trying to spotlight in the 1 and 2 campaign and in our work in Oklahoma. It's like, you're not protecting survivors, man. You incarcerating them. And then you're not giving them opportunities once they get out of prison to get employment, to get housing, right? To get back on their feet. And so many of them are having to go right back into those same situations where they were experiencing that violence. And so I wanted to bring that up as well, just because, Mashila's story is a really powerful experience of being criminalized for surviving abuse.
And man, in social media, the world right now, the way we polarize gender violence and make it into about gender wars and all of those shit,
right.
I feel like Mashila's story is something that brings the reality of everyday women, especially everyday Black women, that try to resist gender violence and get criminalized, you feel me, in the process. Right. And you know what I'm saying, how recidivism operates. How if you don't give me any opportunities and I got criminalized for trying to survive in here, at the end of the day, I'm gonna try to survive, I get recriminalized for trying to survive. That's something that we really got to sit with. Something that I've seen from the Vera Institute, it said that since 1980 in the state of Oklahoma, women incarceration has increased over 1,000%. Over 1,000% over the past 40 years in Oklahoma. The incarceration rate for women has increased. And what I know about Oklahoma, the uniqueness is it's not just Black women, but thinking about how Native women, Indigenous women uniquely are not only being, you feel me, abducted and missed and murdered, but also how they're being incarcerated. And I think that's the uniqueness of Oklahoma. You know what I'm saying? The state that I always try to talk about in the country, talk about the state of immigrants. And we are that indigenous erasure is something I got to see up front and personal, up front and close, you know what I'm saying? In Oklahoma, and even this. A lot of the social services that many indigenous folks receive in Oklahoma is the prison. You know what I'm saying? They don't get no good health care. They don't get no, you know what I'm saying, good infrastructures on the res. They get access to prison.
Right. Yeah. We've got a story in the campaign from Jimmy, who is a tribal citizen. And he talks a lot about, you know, how, again, Oklahoma is the land of theft, right? Like, you know, the entire state of Oklahoma has been stolen from indigenous
3 times,
and there's still, you know, the McGirt decision several years ago. Kevin Stitt can't stand that, even though he likes to, when it's convenient for him, claim his own indigenous.
Tell the audience though. Tell the audience, because they ain't familiar with Oklahoma. Tell the audience what the McGirt decision is.
Yeah, so the McGirt decision was a Supreme Court decision where McGirt, a Native man, and essentially decided whether or not tribal citizens could be criminalized in the state of Oklahoma courts versus if they had to be tried on tribal land in tribal courts and things of that nature. And it essentially decided that a good chunk, maybe even half of eastern Oklahoma is sovereign native land, right? And so this is still being contested and debated. You know, the Oklahoma City is in central Oklahoma and northeast Oklahoma. Tulsa is the other urban hub. And so now Tulsa has a Black mayor, Monroe Nichols, who was trying to build, positive relationships with tribes up in northeast Oklahoma. But for a long time, the mayor in Tulsa and the governor were very contentious with Native tribes because, again, the state of Oklahoma wants to be able to surveil and criminalize whoever the hell they want, including the people who were the original inhabitants of this land. And so indigenous incarceration is a major issue as well, you know.
Yeah,
any group, any community, you can find them represented and disproportionately represented in Oklahoma's prisons.
Goddamn Oklahoma, I love y'all, but sheesh. And really, I think right now there was some floods that happened in Texas, right? And as somebody that's born and raised in Texas and live back in Texas now, I've been struggling with I'm gonna call it victim blaming, for lack of better terms, and how when people are impacted in states that they believe voted for Donald Trump, that everybody in the state becomes collateral damage because fuck Trump is what y'all voted for. I'm reminded of how a lot of Zionists try to justify blowing up Palestinian children because they voted for Hamas. And I'm thinking about all those little girls that died at this damn camp. It's like they're not of voting age. So for you to try to, you know what I'm saying, explain away their death, you know what I'm saying, for being that, my point in bringing this up is that when we start talking about like politics specifically, it's important that we never, ever, ever try to homogenize the people for the color of the electoral college. Right now in my state of Oklahoma, Greg Abbott is doing his best to try to literally redistrict, you feel me? All Texas maps, but redistrict the map to make it where he's able to siphon more votes, to make it where he ain't got to worry about being threatened for 2026. When we talk about that's what y'all get in Texas, hey, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, this damn near 70% of Texas right there. All of them cities right there voted against Donald Trump. You feel me? As a matter of fact, I seen a stat that said it's more people in Texas that voted for Kamala Harris than in the state of New York. So I was being mindful of when we start, because in my mind, the carceral state works off of the lack of empathy. If I can get you to not have empathy for people, I can start literally waging violence against them in a way and make it always culpable and always make it cool. Right. You feel me? The second thing I want to say, and it's more relation with indigeneity, is that I think the carceral state is always trying to expand and always trying to erase indigenous folks at the core. When we start talking about people like, hey, the reason why Indians should have protected their land, the Indians should have lost the wars, the Indians should have this, that, and the other. What happened in the state of Oklahoma is show y'all that the government of America has broken over 500 treaties with indigenous people of America. And the reason why that decision happened is because the state of Oklahoma was trying to break another treaty with Native Americans. You see what I'm saying? So it's important to recognize the carceral state to do what it would do, whatever it wants to do to expand who it police and expand how it police.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah, man. You got any last words you want to say to the people? Yeah, I'm about to be ready.
Yeah. Just on that note of how people are talking about Texas, and see the very same thing with all southern states, Oklahoma included. What I want people to understand about Oklahoma who aren't from here, or have never, heard from an Oklahoman or anything like that, is that there are amazing people here in Oklahoma. There's an amazing culture in Oklahoma. If you don't know about Oklahoma, there are Black people here. And the reality is that Oklahoma has the most historic Black towns, right?
Yes,
in the same way that we got a lot of history in our indigenous community, that includes an Afro-Indigenous history in Oklahoma as well. So we got a deep culture. Our music and art scene is amazing. And there are a lot of people like myself, like the groups that we work with, organizations across the state who are doing amazing work to resist this carceral state in Oklahoma and to build safe communities, to focus on decarceration, to focus on restorative justice and alternatives, and to focus on supporting people to get housing, to get transportation, to get food access in our communities each and every day. Because we know where our government fails, it's us as community organizers and community organizations who are going to fill that gap and have been filling that gap. And so just know that there are a whole lot of people in Oklahoma who care, who are progressive, who are fighting for something better, fighting for a progressive future, and don't just sweep us under the rug because our entire state went red, right? The reality is that there's a whole lot of amazing people here who deserve better. And so I also dislike that when people from blue states like to say that marginalized people or vulnerable people deserve the terrible treatment or the terrible schools or anything like that because of how other people voted. Because the reality is that wasn't all of us in Oklahoma. You know what I'm saying? That's important.
Definitely. And I feel like in my closing statements, the reason why I brought up the Electoral College in a conversation about the carceral state is I believe when we start making those generalized statements about how it's what they voted for in Oklahoma, it's what they voted for in Texas, what they voted for in Mississippi, I believe that perpetuates and camouflages the everyday violence of the carceral state and how it makes those Black people collateral damage. To me, to be preposterous for a person to be like, yeah, fuck them niggas down there in the Confederate States of America and what they voted for. It's like, so you gonna side with Massa and say fuck the niggas on the plantation? To me, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? It is knowing, like, even in the state of Oklahoma, right? I'm pretty sure Kevin Stitt did an amazing job of gerrymandering the hell out of Lawton, Tulsa, and Oklahoma City to make sure that it goes red, to make sure every county goes red. The same way that Greg Abbott here in Texas is doing his best way to redistrict maps to make sure that he gets that vote. One minute, baby, 1 minute. So we know, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to the way in which we camouflage what happens to Black people specifically, don't get caught up in the Electoral College, man. The red state of Oklahoma and Texas does not represent a lot of the Black and brown people putting their work in every single day.
Facts. That's it.
Yes. And with that being said, I guess that's been a great episode of Keeping It Conscious. Y'all let me know in the comment section what other conversations y'all would like to have. We're gonna see how long I can go every Wednesday, man. It's my goal every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Substack, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. That's where we at, man. Education is elevation. Shout out to all my family in Oklahoma. Shout out to all the amazing people in Oklahoma.